Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 237 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have special guest Anna Williams of the Cedar Grove Law Firm on the podcast. Anna has a boutique practice where she helps businesses, agritourism brands, farms, landowners, land stewards, nonprofits. Really interesting set of practice areas that Anna and her team have at Cedar Grove. In addition, she is a law firm coach, a lawyer coach that helps other boutique legal teams increase firm and attorney wellness, generate higher revenues, enhance their client experiences. If you're looking to launch your own law firm, she is down to have a conversation about that. She loves talking marketing, as do I, and this is part 2 of our 4-part marketing series that we are running during the month of November. I think you're going to take a ton away if you are involved in your law firm's marketing at all. If you're not, regardless of where you are on the team, associate attorney, paralegal, you should be involved in the marketing side of things. So this should be a podcast for you. But if you have any interest in upping your marketing game, you're going to take so much away from Anna. We talk about kind of the current landscape of Google local service ads. We talk about website design. We talk about how to build a brand voice within the community, all real current trends and issues in legal marketing. Really enjoyed this conversation with Anna, and I hope that you do the same. And I'm super excited to get on the call and talk. What we just discussed was one of both of our favorite topics, marketing, all things marketing. Excited to have you on the podcast, sharing your wisdom with the audience. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to be here. Like I was saying, this is my favorite topic. I love being a lawyer. I love talking about being a lawyer and talking about law firms and getting really good heads together and how we can be better at marketing more.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one of the things, for small business owners, it's just such a struggle to keep up with the ever-changing marketing dynamics of keeping your law firm alive online. I mean, and relevant online. It's changed so much. I mean, I've had my own firm since 2010, and the just absolute massive changes that have occurred in terms of what worked in 2010 versus what works now is just complete, could not be, farther apart in terms of where you're spending your time, energy, marketing dollars. It's just one of those things that's constantly evolving. And so I kind of just wanted to look at some of the areas of kind of recent marketing focus that I think can kind of help give the audience a little bit of bearings on this front. So one thing that kind of came our way as an opportunity, and there's multiple attorneys that told me to do this before I jumped on board, and really kind of shot myself in the foot for not diving into it faster. But the Google LSA marketing ads, those were really something that if you kind of got on the front end of, you really got to take massive advantage. I mean, it was like a humongous competitive advantage. But in terms of, the changes that have started to take place, there's now less contesting of LSAs. There's a little bit more, I would say, of being in the dark in terms of how those ads are getting shown to potential clients. So I do think that the kind of massive value is starting to kind of become a little bit more, just of this not pay-per-click mindset, but definitely a little bit of a more equalized playing field, so to speak. So
Totally.
tell me, in terms of like, use that you have seen with clients or at your firm with LSAs, what have been kind of some of the big wins or changes on that front?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. In my mind, and kind of going back to what you said about how drastically legal marketing has changed just in it's not even a decade, like, 5 years. I would put local service ads in that pool as far as things that have really drastically moved kind of the resources available. And so in a way, that's great, right? It's great to have more opportunity, more resource available to communicate your story of your firm to other people, to the world at large. But that can also be really paralyzing, because if you don't understand what resources work for your firm, it is kind of spinning wheels. And so I think, kind of getting to the local services ad conversation, I think the very starting point with local services ads is thinking about your audience and your marketplace. So if we think, okay, I'm just a firm and I could benefit from local service ads, that's true. Like, it's a true statement. Is it going to work for you is the question, right? So I think every firm needs to kind of take a hard look at what they're currently offering, how they're, how they're earning their business right now, and is this a viable option? I think local service ads are really great in small markets. I think that I think they're really great when you're trying to grow a new vertical. If you aren't, that's not your bread and butter. It's not what you do every day, but you want to gain some traction in an area that's kind of been on the periphery. I think local service ads can be a really great tool, because you can basically force the audience that you're looking to capture to you.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
So that's great. It's a great learning opportunity. And then I also think they're really great when you have a very niche, and obviously they're not going to go super granular. Like, our firm in particular does like equine law, for example. There's no local service ad for equine law. So, you can't go so granular with it, but I do think some practice areas have found better success than others. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the ones that are the least saturated do better. I work with a law firm right now that is a plaintiff's firm. Plaintiff attorney, they're kind of a donut around Raleigh. They service Raleigh, right? And they service the state, but they focus their local service ads in the geographic donut around Raleigh. And that's worked really well.
Yeah,
because
awesome.
It's capturing people it's a saturated market. Everybody's paying for local service ads if you're a plaintiff's firm. But they're kind of focusing on these bigger markets a lot, or they're not tailoring it. The local service ads are very manipulatable.
Yes.
And so I think if you just kind of turn it on and see what happens, it's not going to necessarily be a great tool. But if you're very specific with how you want to use local service ads, I think it can really be a good tool.
Yeah, I love that. I think that donut approach is so powerful and a great way to kind of think through that. I think for us, we had such success in a few of our kind of more established offices with local service ads in Asheville and in Gastonia and Wilmington. And then we, at the beginning or at the end of last year, opened up a office in Greenville. And, my thought process was, man, we'll just get off the ground, time flat with these local service ads.
Yeah.
And, it's super expensive, incredibly competitive. You're showing your local service ad that has 2 reviews against like multiple firms that have several hundred. Yeah. And so it's like, even within that space of paying for ads, you're at a massive competitive disadvantage. And so it didn't work. Like the local service ads in that space did not work. So I love the idea of like kind of looking towards smaller markets, looking, at the periphery of bigger markets, because you can really get very specific about where you want those ads to show. So that's a very different approach than I've heard on that in the past. I really like that.
That's great. And, the other thing is when we're looking at organic search engine optimization, there is a very smart consumer on the other end of this. It's not just because they see it and they click. They will go to your website and say, oh, okay, let me learn more about this firm. And they will click organically on your website, which in turn is going to funnel more traffic to your website organically. And so it's kind of almost like a loss leader in a way sometimes. But it is, it is one of those things where yes, it's very targeted. It's very kind of almost like starting to feel like a pay-per-click situation. But if you think about it in terms of a smart consumer, also, they will do their research. They will do some Facebooking or some Instagramming and like see what they can find out about you. Even though they end up clicking through and find you, and they may click the ad and call, they're still going to check out the website. You know what I'm saying? So it does help organic traffic also.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's kind of a place that we're looking to focus a little bit in 2025 is on our website. It's something where we had put a lot of time and energy early on in terms of like getting web presence on. We were doing all kinds of blogs and a ton of web content creation. We really were like focused that, trying to get videos and pictures and all, kind of like making the website beautiful, and then kind of have put it on a little bit of a coast process for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that the website, search engine optimization has really changed a lot recently in terms of with some of these paid ads. Organic has kind of shifted a little bit, with, speed and mobile friendliness. That's really kind of, de-emphasized, some of the long form content. So in terms of trying to drive people to your website, whether it's through LSAs, what are some of the big changes that you're seeing on kind of web design and content on websites that has kind of moved into more of like a mobile friendliness, speed optimization over the last 5 years?
Yeah. So, and not to like hijack that topic, but to directly answer it, really, it just is kind of maybe out of left field. But accessibility has been a big thing lately. I think, I'm not sure, I don't have like data to tell you for sure, but anecdotally, I think that our firm was essentially targeted for this. We had, what I mean by that is making sure that folks that have either hearing impaired or visually impaired, are they able to navigate your website with success? Are they able to get to an attorney? And there are just some rumblings, if you will. And this isn't just a legal website issue. This is kind of across the board with websites generally, is making sure that they are accessible to folks with hearing and visual impairment. And so we kind of got, it's almost like a fish situation where someone reached out and wanted to talk about working with us as a potential client, and was unable to speak with us. So that they said that they had the inability to actually speak. And so I was like, okay, well, how can we get around this? So we did kind of navigate that, and for sure, I feel like made some very generous offerings to compensate and make sure that that person was able to communicate with us. But I think it was phishing. I mean, it started from a website click, right? A contact form. And it was like, hey, I want to do business with you. And so that, you get spam in there for phishing from time to time. And really, seemingly, they knew the market. They knew kind of some more intimate details about their industry. And so I think that they were trying to kind of get into this accessibility problem that websites have. And so it certainly turned on a big light for me. And in conjunction with that, it's kind of like the world kind of tells you the things you need to hear. I was working with another law firm client at the moment on their website accessibility, just making sure that it's compliant. And so that's a big one. I'd say that's probably the one I'm seeing just in my day-to-day. But as far as driving folks to kind of the more mobile friendly, I mean, I think law firms tend to overthink this. I think law firms overthink this dramatically. And at the end of the day, I know this sounds so dramatically simple, but they want to see a face. And they want to see a phone number. That needs to be what they see. And everything else, the bells, the whistles, the kind of organizing the website for search engine optimization is important. I'm not saying that. I just think we overthink this. I think lawyers are thinkers. That's what we do. And so rather than just get it up there, and like done is better than perfect is
Oh,
what
I
I
love
say
that.
with
That's one
our
of my favorite.
marketing.
I said
Yeah.
before you even said it, that like came into my head. So I love that.
Yeah. And so I think we're dramatically overthinking this. And the way that this is kind of what I tell people when we're building websites, or I had a client just the other day. We got this great plan from a web design company. They're going to do this and that, and and I'm like, and the price tag is, and it's like $65,000 or something. And I'm sure that website is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if you generate the traffic, then what are you going to do with those new leads? That's your problem.
Yes.
Your problem
Yeah,
is not
100%.
the way. So kind of just understanding that we're overthinking it sometimes. And when we started our firm, because I'd worked so much with other firms and kind of tackling this website challenge, I said to myself, okay, we're starting and assuming that this is a business card. We are going to have a picture, we're going to have a phone number and a website. And then from there, we build out, which is like, okay, people are calling and wanting to book quick consults. Let's add a consult. Okay, people are emailing us, not calling us. Let's add a contact page. But I genuinely did not put all the things they tell you to put on purpose, because I was like, I want to make sure that when we start to build this site, that I'm constantly looking to what our audience wants from us, rather than us deciding what we want to provide and then providing it. And that's what we've done. True story. That's how we've done it. And we continue to do that every day.
Yeah, it's fun. It really is interesting because, when we built our website, I think that most other lawyer sites at that time were basically like a 1-page or 4-page brochure of their office.
Yes.
And so it was a place where you could really differentiate yourself because there wasn't a lot of dynamic websites, especially in the criminal defense space. There just was not a lot of dynamic websites. But I actually feel like it is, to kind of your point, shifting more back in that direction, just simply because of like the overabundance of like information online.
Yeah.
People, if you're a researcher, you're going all these different places, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, how do I contact this person? They have all this great information, but it's not clear, like, that I can contact, or I submit a contact form and nobody answers. It's like, you got exactly the person that you were trying to get going through your website. And then, there's no response. And so I think it is easy to over focus on some of the bells and whistles. And again, I'd say that we have done that as a firm, and it's kind of time to like go back to a more simplistic setup, because it's something that the consumer wants, and that's probably the most important thing. And maybe this is why Google wants it, but it's also something that Google wants from like a speed perspective. You start putting all of those different videos and everything else online, and then you're getting dinged in terms of your ranking because of the fact that it's just taking too long for this information to get to the consumer that wants it right now, immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is this delicate balance, right? It is like Google is king. Google gets to decide that's just the reality of it.
Yes.
True story. Like we don't get to get outside that sandbox,
Yeah.
At the same time, when people say, and this happens on a regular, our website is not sophisticated. It really is not. It is not a sophisticated website at all. I get people saying to me often, I love your site. It just feels good. And I'm like, because you built it. Because really, like, truly, like, we did not listen. I look at SEO. I look at, search terms and keywords and all the things you're supposed to do. We do all that too. I'm not sitting here telling you we don't do that. I am saying that's secondary, and that's to beef up what we've already heard from our market. And to that end, there's a lot of things I really want to do with our site that we haven't done. I mean, that's kind of the story of marketing, isn't it? It's like, I'll get to it when, and then we practice law and those things go by the wayside. We are right now, our marketing assistant that helps me out would probably be like, probably our 4th generation of what we're going to do next. But because we've talked about a podcast, we've been approached about a radio show, and we're trying to figure out what that audio communication is. for our firm, because I do think it's time. And I have had several people, we had a conference this weekend, that come up afterwards and like, do you have that recorded? Can I get a recording of that? And so that happens a lot. That's me. That's my signal. Now I have to act. Now I have to provide what they are asking for on the website. So that's kind of how it grows and goes. And so, yes, to that end, it will really help search engine optimization, and we will absolutely maximize our, ability to exploit that resource when we do that, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. I think that's 100% right. I think that, again, part of the problem with the, and you were just speaking to this, but part of the problem with the kind of over complicated website is, does all of this information generate calls, generate, online messages? And, if it does, but you're not responding to those, then you've got a real problem. So I think that, and I've heard, time and again, people basically, tell both me and other law firms, you don't have a legal marketing problem. You've got like an intake problem. Like you've got people that are ready, willing, and able to hire you, but you're not hireable because you're not reachable. So in terms of like clients that you've worked with and trying to kind of identify problems with the intake process, like what are some of the biggest red flags or biggest misses that you see with firms in terms of what their intake process looks like?
Yeah. So that I say all the time to our people, I said just this weekend, because we had that conference, I said, I will not be outflagged and I will not be outled. Like as far as leads, I will not, you will not be faster than me and you will not have better swag than me. And those are just non-negotiables, really. And so to your point, because it matters at the end of the day. So our, a client that we worked with not that long ago, I don't want to say they did not have a lead process, but it was a low priority. It was kind of just it was a process, right? It was a process that they had. Well, this is how we do that when they come in. And I mean, we're talking 3-4 days to get a legal services agreement sent out, and then another 3 or 4 days to follow up to see if they got it. And if they got it back, we're talking 2 weeks before engagement actually happened. And this is direct to consumer. This is a plaintiff's firm.
Right.
The same one I was talking about earlier, actually. So what we did is we mapped it. I love to do a client journey map. So we just map out what we are currently doing. And it's very, it's important when you do that to have every player in the room, because you don't realize some steps that are being missed.
Yes.
Or steps that are there that you didn't know were there. And so the first thing is we map it out and we say, what is the status quo? And how are we currently handling leads when they come in? And then we kind of, pipe dream, I guess you will, or magic wand. If we could have it work just like we want it, what would it look like? And in my mind, that means you talk to a lawyer within an hour. I know that sounds ambitious and people are like, that's just ridiculous. Okay. That's what we do. I'm just so I mean, there's people out there that are willing to do that. In my mind, law is a commodity. It is, you have many choices. Everybody at some point is going to need one. It is not something super special like it was, 50, 100 years ago. It's not, we're not special. So that lead generation should feel really good for the client. And so one of the problems that we see is just really not understanding that actually matters, that speed is the thing that is the most important when it comes to leads.
Yes.
And so our entire team, everybody is on our lead call, sequence, right? So at some point they will talk to a live person I just have a receptionist, auto receptionist. That's how we fixed the problem for this plaintiff's firm I was mentioning. The auto reception, not auto receptionist, the offsite remote reception.
Right. But yeah, the virtual.
Yes, virtual reception. That's how we solved their problem and had some really great scripts so that they spoke to a person, and then that person kind of set off this chain of events that really, I would say, turned around their. We also bifurcated it. So, for example, if they called and it was a local service ad, it was very different because, for example, in that case, we don't want them to transfer if it's not a good lead, because then they have to pay for it.
Right.
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 We wanted to bifurcate how we handle those from the virtual reception. which worked out beautifully, because that was the other thing really hanging up their lead process, was they had a lot of, and that's true with traffic, or true with criminal, true with plaintiffs. Like there's a lot of not hireable clients, right? It's not actually an injury or something like that. So being able to kind of start that process earlier on in the lead generation or lead intake process was important. And so from there, we just talked about speed. And so now it's more important. So before, they weren't talking to a lawyer until the LSA was signed. Well, they talked to 5 different other lawyers since before the LSA was signed, and would go with another law firm, right? And so we flip-flopped that process. So now you talk to a lawyer before we send the LSA. That seems kind of intuitive, but it wasn't for this firm, because it's just the way they do it. And so we changed that. And now, not only are their lead process is like streamlined, they use a couple of tools. They use a proprietary one called LawAmp, and then they use CasePeer, I think. So it was getting kind of some automation set up so that it dumped into their system pretty quickly was important. And then now it's like, how can we get more? How can we do, if we had to set up that process first before we could kind of turn on the heat in terms of more leads. So now that we have it, it's just so much more scalable for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, the speed portion of intake really is drastically increased. I mean, that's one of those places where it's very much, again, in like the span of years since opening the firm, the amount of like time that you have to get back with somebody, it's always been something that I've been cognizant of. But I had I was covering for one of our attorneys that was out on vacation doing their consults 2 months back, and we had a client that was referred to us. So this was not like a cold lead, but like somebody that's like kind of calling in, ready to specifically get us involved. Had called into the firm. Our intake team did the meeting set up, got all the information. I called back 30 minutes later, and she'd already talked to another lawyer and hired them. And it was like, this is, that was one of those like kind of eye-opening moments of like, man, it's fast. And this was on this was a DWI case. So, that happens a lot with traffic tickets, but with kind of more serious charges. You almost like expect, well, somebody's going to shop around a little bit and try to get, information from multiple different sources. And the speed portion of things has just completely changed. The other part of this that is just so kind of mind-blowing or eye-opening to me is that for our Freedom Fighter Summit the last couple of years, I have called several hundred law firms trying to like recruit attorneys to come to the Freedom Fighter Summit. And it's been unbelievable to like hear the number of messages that, answering machines, like it's just been such a wild thing to kind of get different, some people have just an amazing, kind of intake and messaging process. Others, there's like nobody answering. I'll call several times, nobody answering. Follow up. There's nobody shooting any type of like message back or follow up. And so it's just been kind of interesting seeing it from that perspective. But I think it's one of those places that is going to get figured out sooner than later, just because of the technology that's available to have instant communication. And it's one of those things where legal is very much behind the curve on this front, like as we always are. But I think it's one of those things that will really cause like frustration, maybe almost like undue frustration on the part of the client, because of the fact that their questions are going to get so much more quickly answered. Like, I'm thinking of like when you call Charter or when you call the DMV and you're on the phone for like 45 minutes before you talk to somebody, those timelines are going to shrink. And then, if the legal service side of things like stays where it is, people are going to just be like, man, I don't want to call my lawyer. I don't want to call leaving a bad review. Like, these people aren't good at answering phones. It's like, well, we didn't change anything. We're still doing exactly what we did, but the expectations are different now.
It's exactly right. And that's, to me, one of the fun things. And I think that's, when you have an attorney who is still practicing. And my husband, John, who is also a partner at our firm, he loves to talk about how email is mail. It's mail, right? It's not texting. It's not phone calls.
Yeah.
It is mail. And we don't do that anymore. We send an email, and if we don't hear back in 24 hours, we're like, oh, well, not listening. It's like, no, it's like, it's mail. Like should be a 3-4 day, maybe a week communication tool. And we've really compromised that mode of communication in a way. But I guess my point is, finding, your best way to communicate is going to make a huge difference. Cause I see firms a lot of times too, when I come in, I know one, not too long ago, it's kind of like a business to business firm, but they, so those leads are largely referrals. But how they communicated was like, they were saying like anything, text, Facebook message, Instagram message, contact form on the website, every and all thing that you could possibly do to communicate, they had a setup. And what that was actually doing was reducing their ability to promptly respond because somebody wasn't checking Facebook. So it's like, 8 hours later, and then that impacts how you show up in search results on Facebook. And so I was like, look, you got to pare this down. You can always build it back up, but it drive everybody to the same place that's going to work for you. Because if you truly are not capable of checking Facebook, so if it's an attorney who's practiced pre-Facebook, right, they probably don't need to use Facebook as their primary tool to communicate. It should probably be phone or maybe email. But do what works for you, and within a firm. And I know a lot of the firms that you guys have are, smaller, but even within a firm, like I, work with like boutique size. So there may be 10-ish attorneys. Those intakes can be different for different lawyers. So if you've got a new one right out the gate, let them have Instagram, let them build their own personal brand through Instagram and communicate that way and generate leads in that way. If you've got an attorney who's just referral based and all, make sure that everybody can get to him by phone. And let's not try to kind of just ill fit the lead process. It's very important that you not overextend in this attempt to be fast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think that is really powerful. I mean, and I think, it's because there's so many different places to communicate. I think that one thought process is, well, I want to be everywhere that my clients are, and I want to respond in the place where they're the most comfortable. One of the things that we've really been trying to kind of figure out, we use Clio, and one of the things that they have is great communication software with clients, but I think the constant back and forth for us is, are our clients going to use this Clio Connect communication tool? So in terms of trying to get if you're more kind of text focused or more call focused, what are some of the ways that you can try to kind of guide a client into that preferred communication method?
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite things to think about once a client's on board as well, because not every client, especially in estate planning. So we work with a young family, they just want a link. Let me set up on the calendar. If you work with somebody who has retired and is 10 years out of working and doesn't use email that much, they want to talk to you. And so I think the best thing is just like, what do you naturally do? I'm naturally on Instagram and Facebook. I have, things going on, mom groups, and like in my personal life, I find myself more on social. So social is a great avenue for me. I use a lot of it. I'm really protective of that time, but at the same time, it's a really great, easy, I know I'll see it. I know it's an easy, like chit chatty here or there. So that's a good one for me. But like my husband, John, is on the road a lot. Our other attorney is on the road a lot. Phone calls is like the way we do it. But we can get them on those quick lead intakes anytime, like almost any, if we have a lead intake, they can just riding down the road, take the call and chat for 5 minutes, and they've talked to an attorney. And so we've, essentially reduced the time spent dramatically. Whereas I'm probably on a Zoom with somebody.
Right,
I can't take that call.
Right.
So it really just depends on what works for that singular attorney. And then, like I said, when we've converted the client, we ask that question again to every client that comes in the door. What is your preferred method of communication? And then we listen. We listen to that.
How do you ask that? Like what is the vehicle for asking that?
Just like that in the meeting. It's one of the things on our list when they come in the door, whether it's a business client, litigation client, or estate planning, we ask the question, like it's on the sheet that we kind of make sure we hit every time they come in. It's a online kind of questionnaire that we ask every client depending on what vertical they are. And they, and sometimes they'll say, it doesn't matter. It's cool. That's not the answer to the question, because there is one. Okay. There is awesome. One. And so our legal assistants and paralegals know that we're going to pay attention to that, right? That's actually like an asterisk. That's not doesn't care is not the answer.
Yeah.
An asterisk, like we don't know yet is the answer.
Yeah.
And I have found that a lot of times people prefer to give information. And I think there's like studies on this, and I can like attest to it being true. People prefer to give you information verbally and receive information in writing.
That's interesting.
It can be sticky as lawyers, because putting things in writing is like, we don't want to do that, which I get. But at the same time, if that's what a client is preferring, then it just makes the ease of conversation. It makes the client interface go better. And then the other thing, it's kind of not exactly related to communication per se, kind of going back to the conversation about the website even, is I think law firms generally, it's been my experience, are scared to have like a brand. Like they want the logo, right?
Yes.
They want the logo, but they're afraid to like live authentically a brand. Like the brand, because that might turn away another kind of client. I honestly think that's the point.
That is the point.
It's for us to focus on who we want as clients. And it just so happens that when, you start out a conversation in a way that is best for you and in a way that obviously is best for them, we found each other on a mom Facebook group or whatever. It's a dreamy relationship because we're kind of in the same space. And have we foregone the person, that doesn't communicate that way? Maybe. But at the end of the day, there's other firms that are probably better suited for people that communicate that way. And so I just think sometimes firms are really afraid to be a brand. And I would say at our office, at least, and when I work with a client, first thing that, when they come on for marketing, is I just pay attention. I want to be on site. I want to see I'm going to call the office, right? I'm going to test this. I'm going to test the lines, and just kind of feel what it feels like. Like, what does it feel like? And I don't mean like that. And that's like not even a thing I can articulate exactly, other than like a brand should be a feeling that you get that is evoked when you do business with a brand. And there's, what I'm talking about. Like,
100%. Yeah.
So I think law firms are just afraid to do that. So if we can kind of identify your brand and emulate that throughout the process, that communication piece kind of solves its own problem. You know what I mean? It kind of solves itself.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of that, you're talking a little bit a few minutes ago about kind of each attorney developing their own voice and brand. And then obviously the firm itself has a brand. Like, how do you see those two things working together for, firms that have, 3+ attorneys? Like, how do you kind of both build the personal brand as well as the organizational brand?
Yeah, I think those are really, that question is really difficult, and almost there is no solution if the personal brand of an attorney at your firm is inconsistent with what the brand of the firm wants to be. And so when I'm working with a client that is a individual attorney, either at a firm, because I also do some kind of like coaching of attorneys within firms. If we discover in our working together that their personal brand is not consistent, and it happens a lot with kind of the more traditional firms and having attorneys that are either looking to partnership or have just made partner. A lot of times I'll find them like right when they're at partnership level, they've just been made a partner and they want some like outsourced mentorship. When we discover that that's the problem, that's hard. And I don't have a solution for that other than you have to have a hard conversation with your attorneys and with your other partners and say, look, this is important. Like, in order for me to be a successful attorney in 20 years, when y'all aren't going to be here, I have to do that. I don't have a choice to not do this in order to play, right? In order to be in play in 20 years, this has to happen. And this is my brand. And when they say no, that's not how we do it. Hard decision to make. It is. It really is. At the same time, there are firms out there that are ready for that and that are looking for that. And I have found, in some instances not, but that actually that kind of that friction that comes when we finally have that conversation about, hey, I need to be on social. I need to be doing networking events that are yoga retreats and not, CLEs and, at a conference center. When they realize and kind of allow some of that flexibility, they do kind of embrace it afterward. If they don't necessarily agree with it, but we're not asking them to do it or agree or subscribe, follow. We're asking them to get out of the way. So that's the ask, right? Is to allow these attorneys that really do want to create a personal brand to create a personal brand. And I think the bigger kind of thing, like I said, is in it highest and best functionality is that the brand of the firm matches and works really well, complements the brand that the lawyer wants to build. I personally think that is a non-negotiable. You don't have it. I mean, you have one anyway. Like you already have. It's like when people, it's like culture. We were going to talk about the culture conversation. It's like, you have a culture. I'm like, oh, we want it to be blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but what is it now? And they'll frequently say like, well, we don't really have it. We don't really focus on it. I'm like, you have it. Everybody has it, And so it's like that. It's like, you're going to have a brand no matter what. It's just communicating it to the public in a more purposeful way is going to, is going to help everybody. And so I think aligning them together is important. And then after that, I think like for example, for our firm, it was really important when we started that the name of the firm not be anybody's name, because I'm not building that. I am building a brand that speaks for itself. And my goal is that when you come to our office, and like just today, we were like putting, Christmas or holiday. We were holidaying already. And somebody across the street yells across and like, you're decorating for Christmas already. And I was like, I'm just decorating. I'm just decorating. I mean, that's who we are. We're going to be the first on the street that has our decorations up, and we're going to have 10,000 or something kids come through our firm when they do trick or treat. And like, that's who we are. Partly because I'm a mom with a kid. And that's not inauthentic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think just kind of making sure that you are being authentic to who you already are, and then just kind of putting that on blast, and then finding people that also are authentic and helping them put it on blast is what matters. That's what we do.
Yeah. I think I think social has really changed that aspect of how you, if you want to call it, advertise, market, brand in any space, because at the end of the day, you are trying to hire a lawyer. Obviously, a firm may be important, but specifically in the criminal defense space, it's like, who's going to be standing with me in the courtroom? And I love, the experience and calls, but like, who's going to be there next to me in the courtroom? And so having that like brand, well known, I think it's just one of those things where, you might almost call it like a, more in like the referral marketing space of the past of like, who are you looking for? Oh, this is the guy that you need to go talk to. This is the gal that you need to go talk to because of, kind of the, what it is, what your problem is, and who you are. Like, this is going to be a good match. But now on social, there's just so much opportunity to share, share yourself in a way that's not salesy. Like, you don't have to have it just be, all of these ads that people are just like scrolling past. Like the best content is stuff that's really not even law driven or, not in this kind of like, here's why you should hire me vein, just, memes, funny, long form description. Nobody wants that.
They don't want that.
They don't.
No one asked. Nobody. It's like those memes. It's like nobody asked. Nobody asked for that. Yeah. It's just on purpose. Law is boring. That. It's not exciting to it's not a warehouse that's making things that you can go and show behind the scenes and it'd be cool. It's literally people looking at a screen That's not interesting. It's just not. But what is interesting is the people that are doing the work. And so when we post or when we send out a newsletter, it's like I tell our clients, whatever it is you're doing to communicate with current clients or prospective clients, it should be meaningful. If they're like, well, we have this plan to do a blog once a month, and we want to do a newsletter every quarter. And I'm like, but do you have something to say? Like, is there something that you really need to say every quarter? And if that's the truth, if you're just bursting at the seams to get this content to people, then maybe we shouldn't wait for the quarter. Maybe we should, when it's, when you have the, whatever that thing is, the info to share it. And if you don't, then don't, because that's when it matters. Like, that has to happen. And so when our social presence is purposefully community oriented and just kind of like us. It is not like legal. Like, you're not going to see me on there being like, here's a tip of, file your BOIR by the end of the year. Is it something that we're communicating to our clients internally? 100. Is it something that we send out and say, hey, if you have a small business owner friend who may not know about this beneficial owner information report that's due, forward this email to them. Here's the link. That's so helpful. Like, that's actually helpful. It's not like I'm trying to say, do business with us. I'm genuinely just trying to participate in like the business life. And so that, I think lawyers overthink it. Again, I think we get back to this, like, I don't have anything relevant to share. Then you shouldn't share. You shouldn't share. And then because no one wants to see it. And no shade, like, to attempts. Like, we have to fail forward with marketing online for sure, social. Also, I just think if you have to think about what content you're going to provide, editorial calendars are really important, but that should be the secondary piece. It shouldn't be like, let's plan out these dates we're going to post and then dump something in. You have 20 things today during your day that you can post if you want to post on social. It's just, that's not everybody's game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the opportunity to grow on social is still like incredibly strong within businesses. And it's because, like, on Facebook and on LinkedIn, those are the two platforms that I spend the most time on. So I can't really speak as much directly to other platforms, but you almost have this still like very divided line between, like, when is somebody posting personal and when are you getting like a advertisement from a business. And so I think that the easiest way to build that business brand in a space where we're just getting increasingly good at basically blocking out all of those billboards online now, like, you just don't see it. Your brain is like just so conditioned now to scrolling past all of the and it's identifiable now because it says ad on it a lot of times. So it's like, immediately, like, even if it was something that would be helpful to you, it's just like, boop, like, just on to the next
it's
thing.
Just a spite. It's a spite delete. I say that all the time. Like, a spite delete. It's a spite scroll. It's a spite swipe. Yeah, totally. I don't want to be spite swiped.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. No, it's true. I think also when we kind of think about, I think sometimes when I talk about social or talk about newsletters, it's like, it almost feels like, well, I'm not doing any of that. Like, also, okay, totally okay. I don't think anybody should feel obligated to do social or to post newsletters or blogs. If it's not, I'm not a writer. I'm a talker. I'm a get in front of people. I'll presentate all day long, right? But do not ask me to sit down and write a blog, because it's just not fun. It is work for me. It's just not fun for me.
Yeah.
And so I've never been a blogger. I've hired lots of people to write blogs, but I've never actually been the content creator for that. So I just think it's important that when you're talking about, and this is kind of like business development, I think I mentioned this before our call. It was like this kind of blend from like the business or practice development piece to the marketing front. Like the business and practice development is kind of the more macro in my mind. And then the marketing is kind of the more micro, like how we're going to do what you are intending to do, what your business development. And I think it's awkward for some attorneys when they're like, well, I just don't want to do social. Like, okay, well, then don't.
Yeah.
Then don't do that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult to put your time into something that is like an energy suck, even within like Facebook and LinkedIn. Like at this point, I'm kind of like heavily in on the LinkedIn side of things and
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
given up on Facebook because it just is like an
Yes.
energy suck to me. And LinkedIn is like I
Totally.
get all of this like
It's just,
great
yes,
feedback. So it's like that's where I'm putting the time
that's
because
it.
I get
Yes.
joy out of doing it. So
Yes. And we have a I we have a firm that we recently helped it. The one of the owners is really into cars, like rehabbed cars and like show cars. And we're like, let's like lean all the way. You are an injury lawyer. Like
yeah, yeah,
we can
yeah.
go all the way with this.
Yes. Oh
And
yeah.
so that's what we've done is like we've leaned hard into it and it's really being successful. I mean, not kind of sort of hard, like, and I don't want to like say, oh, I hope y'all get them because we're about to do a campaign with them, but like they're putting air fresheners in a little like, foldable thing that goes out in the mail with an air freshener that smells. So you get it in the mail and you're like, what the heck is this?
That's awesome.
It is so smart. It's not overthinking it,
Yeah.
right? Do
Yeah.
we expect that people are going to like use it? Probably not. That's not the point. The point is that you get this mailer and you know who this firm is and you're
Yeah.
thinking, okay, cars. That's the point. It's that simple, right?
That's
like it's
awesome.
literally not any more interesting than that. That's the point. And so it's just kind of making the association to your audience so that when they're ready to buy, because it's like car accidents, you hope you don't need a person like for that. You hope you don't need it to be represented in that way. It's just when a client goes from almost a client to ready to purchase, do they remember who you are? Like to me, that's marketing.
100%. Yeah, that's great. I think that's again, that's brilliant. Like, I mean, if anybody is listening and doing the PI, that's the one to write down right there.
Well, you're going to get them. You're about to get, if you're in North Carolina anyway, you're probably going to get hit up with this before
That's
too
awesome.
long. So you heard it here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of maybe end on this note, I think for so many attorneys that are in small firms, and I would say, the vast majority of listeners of this podcast are solo firm owners to, 3 to 5, like that's that we're kind of in that 1 to 5 range of firms, generally speaking, on the criminal defense end of things. I think one of the things that's a real struggle because this is for the most part attorneys that are in and out of the courtroom all the time, trying to communicate with clients in the office, figure out the trust account, pay the bills for the office, figure out hiring the new legal assistant, all of these different arenas. How do you advise attorneys that are in small firms that they're still working in to work on their business? Like what is the conversation around that?
Yeah. So the first thing we always do is kind of like a business audit, and it's not what you think. Like it's not numbers audit. That's for your CPA, right? This is like an audit of like what's going right, what's going wrong. And if they're like, well, I've been thinking I probably need to hire somebody, or I probably need to replace somebody, you should have done that 6 months ago. For sure. Like full stop. We don't need to have another conversation. You are going to hear it from me again that should have probably happened 6 months ago. And it's not to say, we get to be families, right? We're small firms and you're like super close with the people that you work with. It also doesn't mean that needs to be the person who is doing your lead intake. If they're slower and don't prioritize it, and you've said 100 times, we need to make this a priority, and they just aren't going to do that. And you're going to focus on lead intake. You have 2 options. You can move that person somewhere else down the line so that they're not impacted by your lead generation attempts, or that they're not going to slow that down. Or you can find somebody who is, and that's just really what you got to do. So first things first is like when we do the audit and they say, well, probably, I know I should have, or I really want to get involved with this group and I just haven't done it. I'm like, you should have done it 6 months ago. Like it's already there. You know what I'm saying? Like the things you want to do and you need to do, like the sparks that you already have right now, it's sitting in, taking up headspace. It's true. Like you got to just trust that gut because it's waiting for you on the other side of like that decision. And it will be the smartest thing that you've done because you didn't just wake up and be like, yeah, maybe I need to hire somebody. Like that didn't happen. Like that's not, you just didn't get some random, like, thought in your head. It's, you've been out there and it seems like, oh, how am I going to make payroll? How am I going to, all the things. They are scary things to consider. And lawyers do not do things brashly generally, even the ones that are super kind of, right-brained plaintiff's attorney, traffic lawyers like that just have a lot of trouble focusing on the business side of things. Sometimes even those people, they're lawyers. You got into this space already because you can apply some analytics. So you're not going to make a rash decision. Just make the hire, just outsource the work, just do that thing that's already nagging you and promise you should have done it 6 months ago. Like that's just, and it's not like a guilty thing either. It's just like, if you're worried that you are doing it too soon, it's not too soon, I think is the takeaway.
That's awesome. I think that is such practical advice. That's not at all the direction that I thought you were going to go in. And that's such practical advice. Like, I mean, I think again, sometimes we can just complicate things so much. It's like, well, but what should I really be doing? It's like, no, like, I mean, the thing that you've been, has been draining your energy and you're concentrating on, like, obviously just make a change. And I think again, but with I know personally myself, and then a lot of people that are in the law space, you're trained to be analytical and like, write a brief about everything and have this like kind of long back and forth, two people on opposing sides, like have a long drawn out, debate about what the right answer is. And sometimes just making a call and then potentially a mistake is fine. It's like, Absolutely. At least you made a mistake and now you can, kind of work on the mistake and learn that way. I think for me, that's been the path to success generally has just been making mistakes. It's just like, let's totally. What we're doing right now isn't working. Let's try something else. Okay. That didn't work either. Like just keep on trying to figure out the light bulb situation.
Yes. It's so true. I think I saw something recently in an elementary school that it was like failure is an option. Failing to deliver is not. And so I'm like, that's totally it. Yes, and like with all the AIs and the socials and the blog posts and all this stuff we've talked about today, like at the end of the day, you're going to do you and what you do better than any of these things.
Yes.
Forever. And the point is, the job is, the struggle, the best, highest and best is you freeing up as much time as you can to do that. Do you know what I mean? To do that. And everything else is just, let's get it out of your way. Let's just get it out of your way so you can do the thing that you're the best at.
I love it. That's awesome. But I love it. I think that's like just such good practical advice to end it with. Whatever that thing that's nagging at you, make a call on it. Straight from Anna.
Do it. Just do it. Call me and be mad. You can blame me. You can be like, I took horrible advice from this girl on this podcast.
Well, no, I think that's a perfect place to end. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with the audience. If you have any interest in coaching or business marketing services, can you share what the best way to contact you is?
I'll tell you my best way. My best way is to go to our website, which is cedargrove.law. cedargrove.law. Those communication opportunities are the ones that get to me the fastest. So cedargrove.law. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.